Okay, look, I think we might get things underway and people can join as we progress through. So my name is Andrew Gibson. I'm a Senior Account Manager in the higher education sector. And today we're talking about how to leverage your student data to drive student portals and engaging experiences on university websites. So I'm joined today by Anthony Negro. He's the Global Head of Higher Education for Squiz, and Andrew Rigney, our special guest. He's the Senior Manager of the Web Office at Charles Sturt University. So the agenda for today's session is initially kicking off talking about the importance of a data-rich student experience. Then we're going into a little bit of a case study, just a revisit of something which was discussed at Squiz Summit. That's the My Griffith portal, followed by the Charles Sturt University student portal case study. And then we've got an open Q&A at the end as well. So look, I'd really encourage everyone to ask questions in the chat as we progress through. And then we'll answer some of those questions with Andrew at the end in a bit of an open Q&A. This session is also being recorded as well, so we will distribute the video once it is finished, and you can pass on to your colleagues. Thanks very much, and I will pass over to our first presenter, Anthony.
Excellent, thanks a lot, Andrew. And I'd like to welcome everyone here today, which that will be most likely our last webinar of the year, heading into the Christmas period. So thank you for taking the time and joining us today. What I want to do is start off the discussion by going back in time a little bit. What I want to focus on is how leveraging data has allowed us to enrich experiences. So I'm sure everyone is pretty familiar with this Yahoo screen here. This was how we really first started to consume information on the internet. The way it worked in general was obviously we had a search, but most commonly we had a farm of links available to us. And this allowed us to sort of navigate to key sites and really, as I said, just use information that we had to be able to find out where we wanted to get to. So using I guess a farm of links. What quickly happened after that is we evolved to more of a concierge style. So we're able to interact with Google, we're able to ask questions, and we're able to get information back that was relevant to us. So this started to improve the service that we were receiving, but it still required a little bit of evolution. And then where we've landed on is we're now at this time where when we go out looking for information, we can start using Google, we'll search for something, and Google goes off, it grabs some relevant data for us, and it will actually bring it one step closer. So in the case in question, I've searched for weather, and what's happened is it's gone off, it's retrieved some data, and it's presenting information that most likely will satisfy my needs. But as a user, I still have the option to scroll down and look at what other pages might exist. But I think this in its most simple form is a really good example of how we can leverage data in order to improve our experience. So if we flip that a little bit and we think of the experience that we provide as universities or higher education institutes, our world has completely changed. So very much a student has been very connected to a physical experience. They can go to student centers and they're offered that concierge kind of service. But what we know is this year, and probably for years to follow, the experience has completely changed and we're losing that physical connection. So what we need to ask ourselves is, how can universities continue to attract and retain students in light of a changed environment? So how do we do it? Well, the way I think about it is we need to do less of providing farms of links to our students, and we need to do more to bring forward data for our students. So we need to make really good, compelling experiences that gives data to their fingertips instead of having to dive through a farm of links to be able to get there. So because of this time, I think the service that you provide really needs to match the culture of your university, because they're not always going to be in a physical environment to receive that culture. Therefore, your culture really needs to transcend our previous interaction methods. So just to demonstrate that really quickly, what I'm going to do is revisit a case study that we ran at our summit. So Trent Belling from the Griffith University, he presented on their approach to both student portal and providing personal information. So what we can see in this case, this is one of their, I guess, My Griffith, My Orientation app. In essence, it's an app there focused to ensure that a student can get through a really difficult transition period. And what we've got, when I go there, I log in, the My Orientation app will keep up to date with my latest happenings, any data from the university. So in essence, it's giving me information that I need to be able to get through a difficult process. And it's allowing me to abstract the really complex, I guess, technical infrastructure of a university. So this is a really good starting point to make sure that the first experiences when a student is signing up with the university, that we're using that data or things that we know about them or where they are in the journey to help progress. Another example that Trent talked through was their journey with Student Portal itself. So on this screen, you can see on the left, we've got the initial portal that was launched around 2015. And then what we've got is a refreshed look that was launched this year in 2020. When you look a little bit closer, you'll see on the 2015 version, we've got a lot more hyperlinks. So as much as there's some personal information here, but we still relied on the user to be able to click through to different systems to get to their information. Based on feedback from students with Griffith University, they've moved more to a model where there's more information at the students' fingertips. So very quickly and easily, they can get to the information either for schedule, for course information, things with one less click required to get to that data. And this is just another example as well. So this is actually showing I guess the course profile and a little bit more data. So what you're able to see is a student's able to jump in, they've got enough information at their fingertips to be able to understand what they need to achieve, but we're still linking off to other sites. So this is the direct parallel to that Google experience, making sure that what data we have, we're showing, but we're not actually putting too much that's not going to be used. So it's the right information to guide the student. So that was just a quick snapshot to just really show how we can leverage data to improve that experience. Before I hand over to Andrew Rigney to be able to go through his story, the experience that we built there with Griffith and also what Andrew is going to talk about here for Charles Sturt, these were built, I guess, through 2019, which means they predate some of our new technology like Squiz Connect and Squiz Data Store. But it's good to see that we're able to leverage, I guess, these approaches and learn from the experience with Griffith and Charles Sturt to be, I guess, focusing our product development moving forward. So officially, I'd like to welcome Andrew Rigney to talk us through their approach.
Having me here today. It's quite awesome to be able to present to you guys and walk through our solution that has been a very long time coming, but we're really happy with where we've got it now for our students. So what we'd like to cover off this afternoon is where we've taken it. So what's our story, what data we use to deliver to our students, a high level view of our architecture, and then the outcomes that we've seen and the benefits, as well as our roadmap for where we'd like to take the student portal down the track. So without further ado, our story is actually quite similar to what Anthony just introduced with the Griffith story. We started our student journey mapping project 24 months ago, engaging all of university, driven by executive directors and sponsors in student communications, trying to identify every touch point a prospective through to an alumnus had with the university. Striking the balance of our experience between an online and an on-campus student, identifying our key personas who were our market, and then looking at the mechanisms to reduce the friction with that student acquisition, the student retention, and the progress through their learning. One of the key features and drivers of ours was a shift in the enterprise mindset, moving away from a technical solution to an experiential and student-driven experience from go to woe. One of the key goals is to reduce that new student culture shock. So we get our Year 12 graduands and they enter the higher education system and can engage and thrive with Charles Sturt from the get-go. We also identified, and it may be a very common situation, just the plethora of systems that a student would have to engage with to do their life cycle. 7 different applications, 11 different subdomains at the Charles Sturt, and certainly a confusing and potentially disjointed experience for students. We addressed some of our old pain points around being mobile first, and we also looked as part of this project to deliver a more sustainable tech stack so that our Squiz development team, and when I say Squiz, it's our in-house development team who focus on Squiz CMS, can extend and grow and evolve the student portal rapidly, sustainably, maintainably, so that we can get to market quicker. Just a quick bit about us, the team. We're a bit blessed in that we have a UX and content team. Our UX manager is a graduate psychologist, so Paula Woodhouse has enormous insight into the user experience, and it's through our UX and content team who's really been driving that this is an experiential mindset, no longer just a technical solution. We've got specialist content writers, we've got guys who adhere to our new brand. We've then got our development team who are our Squiz experts. We have our dedicated project management team as well, and that is overlaid with steering committees, governance structures, and what I've called out there cross-project tiger teams. As a university, we have a lot of projects going on at any given time, and having those cross teams gives us the ability to look for opportunities where two projects might be targeting the same overarching outcome or have the same inputs, and we can look there to get an economy of scale and potentially squash down our solutions and still feed the results out to both projects. So getting the most bang for our buck, which in the current climate is certainly going to be a goal of every university with the crunch we've all felt through COVID. Our approach is nothing different than anyone else would be doing as well. We are heavily a test-driven project management, so we do lots of user engagement, noted in the process. We're multi-channel feedback. Our content audits define our content strategy. We're aiming for a maintainable technical approach. We've tried various other sort of frameworks in the past with limited success. So finding a happy medium that gives us what we're after has been a really good win for us down the track. Sorry, I just got distracted by Q&A. And we are a responsive project delivery. So Charles Sturt is an agile house or an agile enterprise. We actually tweak that and we've become what we term internally as a responsive project methodology. Regarding our process, lots and lots of workshops across the various personas. We're using our students, perspectives, general people out in the workforce, trying to get the best information possible for our users to define our our use cases. We want to know our audience. We want to define our user test. We want to analyze our test data. We want to make our business case around our user feedback. Not that we ever shun our internal users, but with our student portal, it is all about getting the information that the student requires at a point in time in front of them with the absolute minimum of friction. We then use our regular old agile backlog and estimates, our ad card change management processes to get our comms plans across the enterprise, across students. We collaborate with our Division of Student Services for key messaging. We work with our Division of Student Administration to ensure that any onboarding processes are there with our orientation events and other bits and pieces. And then we move to our regular cycle: design, build, test, release, and repeat, which pretty sure anyone who's building out student portal or even just working through the Squiz Matrix content management system to deliver a user experience to any part of an enterprise would be well familiar with. For our students, the primary benefits that we've realized in our 24-month project to date is the success of our prioritization of scheduling of features to ensure that key features are delivered at critical times to students, so that we're not delivering a graduation module 3 weeks after the graduation ceremony is closed and is lying dormant for another 4 months. Aligning all of those disparate jigsaw piece puzzles has been a very big win from the project management and the strategic engagement with our stakeholders. And that's led to an increased student satisfaction across all of our journey. We've seen increased acquisitions, we've seen a better retention rate, we've seen improvements across our NPS, we've seen improvements across our emotional trend line that we use with our Usabilla product. So All of our metrics at the moment point to it being a success. 2020, of course, will have skewed results and will have to be taken with a minor grain of salt, but the long-term trend appears to be on an upward trajectory, which for us is very heartening. I'm going to now just drop out of this window and give a bit of a cook's tour of our student portal, touching on what Anthony said about getting information at a point in time in front of the students when they most need it. It's going to be the focus of this. I will now just pull up to our student portal homepage. The first thing that will strike you is we built or designed this at the end of 2018 for a 2019 build, and the end product is still quite similar to Griffith. I think what that indicates is that we as a higher education industry have really learned what our students are, what they need, and what the experience of that is. So we've come to the same nexus of solutions. So the same key problems, the same drivers have all surfaced themselves in a very appy dashboard style screen for a student where what they need is right in front of them. We do have filterable dates on a timeline with all our key dates. We do have personalized calendars. All of the stock standard, for want of a better word, the things you would expect to be at the ready fingertips of a student. What I'd like to focus on are our checkpoints. So on our little menu, we have checkpoints, and because we know who the student is at a point in time, we know if they're about to engage in orientation. There would be different options if we were a returning student, for instance. We know this about them, so we present them the menu options that are contextual to their point in time so that they don't get confused. But if I was to flick over a tab, I'm going to go to, say, the Get Started. This is me coming fresh into Charles Sturt as either a school leaver or a mature age student, maybe joining part-time, entering from the workforce, which is one of our primary markets. We've got all of our content, tone of voice aligned with our strategic brand. It's the friendly introduction. It tells you your progress, what your next things are. Where am I? I've got 0 days to go for my orientation to start. I've got coursework. What do I need to know? I'm about to hit 0 days before the session 3 census cutoff. So we're telling the new students when they join, obviously this is for 2090 for us as our nomenclature, exactly where they are in their studies, whether that's an onboarding or a returning. What the hidden magic to this whole page is are our checkpoints. We've got here a whole graphical journey that leads the student through all of their onboarding, all of their recommencement, all of their continuing operations that may be seasonal. A lot of these here are one-offs because we're at our orientation and onboarding stage. But I can quickly flick through. I've got some pre-canned links, so I've gone through manage my enrollment. I've got my information. We've got our components here built with content from our design system. I can mark that as complete. I can jump to the next task and work in progression. We've also got with our checklists feature the ability to lock features off at points in time or have feature B dependent on feature A's completion and vice versa. So we can do a sequential flow for students. So whilst we try to hold their hand and we encourage them to explore where they can, we also want to shepherd them through that journey of onboarding so that they're rest assured they're not confused about what to do next. These are also, for the technically minded, we've written this as a completely extensible. So we're now building our HDR checklists, and we do that for cohort on cohort, and we can evolve these over time as our business needs and our student needs change. The timetable management. We now have also the really interesting one here, and this is a really good example of our liveness of both the demo and our system. As of this morning, we closed out our orientation. So I'm not sure how good or faithfully the screen reproduces, but behind our little lockout shadow, you can see all the content with our markers on 1, 2, and 3 for the steps, where we guide them through the engagement, registering them in the orientation events pertinent to their current enrolment, allowing them to browse for additional events and workshops, be they library sessions, how to use e-catalogs, all of that. They can register their attendance, and then we mark them off and they get populated in their calendar. Now, because we've just closed out a session and this is now prepping, and it's only happened this morning, we've now locked them out for this so that they can't confuse themselves. It is a bit of a bugger because it's a really quite cool screen, but rest assured that there's actually a multi-step wizard in behind that shepherds them through that whole orientation events part. But what I did have pre-canned was our orientation events screen, where we have our little cards, we can show more, we can register, we track sessions, we've got sub sessions and all sorts of like breakout rooms and everything managed and filterable, so that we can give our new students, our returning students, the most easy to consume information for what could be quite a complex operation to discover and register for 1,000 events at the university at kickoff time. And all of these registrations, just as an aside, flow back into your calendar. So I have pretty much bugger all because I'm about to close out as the student, but all of our registrations flow back through here. We, with our, and I'll get to this in our architecture, we've just rolled out our new CRM platform. So we've done events integration through it. So as major events are managed on external platforms, they're rolled into CRM and rolled through to our student portal as one of our on-flow, so that we can aggregate from disparate sources. We actually have an infinite number of events platform, or the capability for it, and they'll all consolidate into our student calendar. Plus students can download, they can add ad hoc events, so they can use this with their inbuilt device-based calendaring as well. Another quick little bit of similarity with Griffith was the idea of your subjects and results. I do want to flick, and excuse me if making people seasick, but this is our QA environment. We have our little GPA and course progress meters and other bits and pieces. I'm not a registered student, so I have no enrollment, so I have nothing to showcase. And our debug user is actually in between sessions at the moment, but this is where we account for our test data through our QA environment. So we can start to see how students hook out to their various Blackboard courses. The integration there, we don't consume the LMS data into the student portal, we branch them out to our LMS platform. We've also integrated to our exam timetabling and also our class scheduling, by the way. I didn't call that one out, but both of those will be visible in the architecture diagram. Both of those feed our calendar. Plus you can get your snapshot view of where your exams are, especially with our online. I'm assuming most people in the room here had to handle and manage the breakout to online exams throughout the year. So we rolled this function out rather quickly to support the transition to online for our second session, what we call their 2020-60, where we moved all of our exams and our online learning, or all our learning, to being an online model. So that was a really rapid rollout facilitated by our infrastructure and by the CMS front end through Squiz. Graduations. So this one ties into one of our student management systems. What it does hide is quite a lot of business smarts around that really pertinent question: am I eligible to graduate? So we look at lots and lots of data about a student, have their course progression, their financial position, have they completed integrity modules, are there any holes, et cetera, and we guide them through getting into graduation. If a student cannot graduate, if they're not eligible, we display them very friendly, very relevant messaging at point in time around how to remediate that. So not only are we encountering here and covering off the happy path, we're also making sure that when an exceptional circumstance occurs, we're holding the hand of our student to guide them through the remediation and recovery from that. Generally, if something goes wrong, the student's going to be in an agitated, a defensive, a vulnerable position. So we've got to make sure that our psychology around this is reassuring that the world's not ending. There is a way to work through this to get you graduating at the end of the year. We've integrated with our finance systems and our card system, both for knowing your base balances across the university and for your card-based purchases. One of our future roadmap items down the track is a digital Charles Sturt card here, so that we can do e-payments and e-touch, eventually moving towards access to resources based on your e-card as well. We've integrated out to our Dynamics platform and its adjunct booking services. We use Time Trade so that students can request and book meetings with counsellors and resources and student advisors. These are all cognizant and integrated to our Exchange platform so that the bookings work two ways. It'll either block it out or it will see that an existing appointment generated through Outlook is blocked out. So we did have a rather small but very annoying situation where that synchronicity wasn't working in our old platform, and potentially we were having double bookings, which was obviously a headache for both parties, students and the facilitators. So tying that together through Exchange has been a bit of a win in the last couple of months for all of us. The last major piece of integration that we've done for students to give them what they need when they need is our forms portal. We have gone from a range of portals being CMS custom Squiz forms through to PDFs. I won't mention that we did have some plain old Word files in there as well. But on the sweep through of our platform, we've killed off all the Word documents as they should, and where possible, everything's cut to a web form. Now, some of our forms are more complex interactions and generate both cases or requests within Dynamics. These are actually done through a platform that front ends the form server in Microsoft Dynamics 365. So we've got the ability here to overlay for experience the complex forms that generate cases. Mobile first, which we didn't get out of the box with the Microsoft Forms solution. The experience here of an overlay, so they still seem integrated into Student Portal, but they are actually a separate system. They will send data in securely through many layers of protection to generate cases in CRM for the student, attached to the student record directly. And it just loads it up and sets to workflow for the nominated teams. You may have noticed down bottom right our chat button. We've also got a Dynamics connected chat. So as a student, I can go in, my chat is connected to my extant student record. So we've got a history. I can also initiate co-browse. So our student services frontline support staff can have the student share their screen and we can see their highly personalized data, remembering that we can't ever generate enough test cases here to synthesize the experience for every one of our 31,000 students. So having that co-browse so that support teams can see exactly what the student sees has been a real bonus. And those sessions are both secure, they're student initiated, so there's no privacy issues, and the chats resulting from that build a nice little history around the student. The last thing I wanted to call out in the demo was not only did we have a student portal, we transitioned from being a single solution of a secure student portal to having our secure one, but also a public current student site. Both that it has the general non-personalized information, but we're also using this as an acquisitions tool. The taster of student life for a Charles Sturt student, if you're coming from year 12, if you're coming from the workforce, how do I get in? How do I see and feel and experience Charles Sturt online without being a student? I can come here and get a whole lot of learning on a public space. It's obviously backed by Funnelback, but it's also indexable by Google, whereas our student portal is only driven by Funnelback. And that's been an enormous win for us. But we do get, rather cool stuff. And when I just touched then on integrating with Funnelback, we actually use Funnelback as an integration platform to our Dynamics-based knowledge base articles. So we can start to expose information. And this is predominantly driven by Student Portal, and it's probably just bugger. It's like the blue screen of death at a Microsoft demo. Apologies, guys. I have no idea why that just decided to stop working. Luckily, it's the last part of the, there we go. My tab pauser must have halted it. But our little solution here, exposing 1400 KBA articles, it honors whether they're public or internal. And this is a really good example of how we can tie a large platform like Dynamics through to our content management system via Funnelback. So using the Squiz stack to get accessible, highly responsive, fast rapid turnaround, low latency results back to the student when they need it most. I will come back to all right, so hopefully it wasn't too boring flicking through tabs, and I hope I didn't make anybody feel seasick, but there's an awful lot to cover. As Anthony has said earlier, we could spend all afternoon doing it. But what I've got on screen now is a very simplified high-level architecture of the current state. I would not have put you through the past state of our systems, certainly 5 or 10 years ago, but we've spent considerable time before me. I've only been with Charles Sturt for 2 and a bit years, but getting our integrations platform aligned, getting our high performance datacation API tier sorted. And we've been able to really leverage those things through our student portal and current student sites to deliver that highly personalized experience around courses, around exams and class and library borrowing, student cards, appointment bookings. You can see how there's an absolute litany of systems that pull together through that API cache. It's also one of the ways we've been able to get to market as quick as we have, being that the first iteration of Student Portal was delivered in a 9-month project in 2019. Actually, pretty much bang on 12 months ago was our first release. I was saying to the guys, we took 6 existing API endpoints and we tossed one out. We rebuilt 2 of them. We massaged 2 and we built 4 new endpoints from the ground up to tie together things like exam timetabling, class timetabling. And that was our 2019 delivery. If we hadn't used Squiz and the existing infrastructure, we would still be there now trying to build it out. Had we the opportunity to use Connect at the time, it would have been a very viable way potentially to tie together the CRM platform, which was this year's big project in the integration. Skipping out to now the outcomes and our next steps, certainly the outcomes, I think everyone could put their hand up and give themselves a bit of a cheer that we got our students through 2020. 2020 has been a horror. It's been challenging enough just being a staff member, but I couldn't imagine what it would be like if 6 weeks into my very first year of uni, fresh out of year 12, I got told, oh, by the way, you've got to leave your residence and go off campus and learn from home. We're rather proud of the way we did get our students through that transition to online. We've always had a big online footprint. It's actually growing that we're about roughly 2 to 1 now online versus on campus, but shipping everybody off and scaling out our infrastructure, scaling out our support mechanisms through the CMS, managing resi schools, organising live face-to-face resi schools and intensive for our nursing, our vets, people who can't operate without face-to-face has been a real challenge and a real win for us. The analytics, when we look at the long-term numbers, it's actually a little disheartening when we look at that top chart where the orange line is 2018 and the blue line is 2020. You go, oh, this is no good. We've actually seen less. But we've got to take into account that we've actually split out now to 2 sites. We've got our secure student portal in that top deck and our public current students. So when we look at the numbers, they're about the same. A bit more traffic in total through in 2020, which reflects our student growth, sort of 3, 4, 5%. The big ones that we're most happy with is that we've absolutely smashed our exit and bounce rates through our student-facing portal site. The students are finding the information they want. They're finding it quickly. They're staying on page. So our time on page is a really good metric, and they're not bouncing out. We're giving them what they're after. As mentioned, we have a platform called Usabilla, now SurveyMonkey platform, where we use to do our ad hoc surveys, our A/B tests and other bits and pieces. The emotional trend line that Usabilla provides for us as part of the feedback has shown a general improvement since we've rolled this out. Every now and again, you get some big dips. Then we go into a break and fix on something, but that's life. Our marketing division also have initiated NPS across the enterprise. That's rolls up not only student portal and the student facing sites, but a whole other raft of our ecosystem, as well as our physical supports processes. But we've seen a general move there away from being detractors through to being neutral and a bit of a push on promoters. So we are seeing a nice positive result of that sentiment and that satisfaction of students across all of our touch points, which reflects really well on the effort we put into that journey mapping exercise 2 years ago. What does the future hold for us? We've got another project in 2021 to keep integrating with other platforms, looking at our accommodation and our residents, looking at our workplace learning so that we can present that information. We already know which students and their courses are subject to WPL, but getting that managed information in front of them. We want to evolve the current. We don't just want to sit still and let what we've got have the grass grow around it. We want to always look at our feedback, look at opportunities to refine, to extend, to make better what we've already delivering to students, to keep that continuous improvement mentality and that momentum that we've built now really charging ahead. And we always want to make sure that our student portal digital platform remains relevant to students and also aligns with our business and technical strategies. What does it hold for us for Squiz? Well, we've been in negotiations with the guys looking at a way to pilot data store. We use our high performance cache. It's a bit of a poor man's way to store our personalization and configuration information. So standing up data store and pushing out our personalization data that's sourced from our portal would give us the ability to really win with our user experience. We can tailor things through the application and we can store them in data store. We move to DevOps so that our team internally can do the blueprints, do the schemas, do the connectivity to data store without us needing to go to our sibling teams through DBAs, through APIs, other bits and pieces. So reducing that time to market for the really cool experience information and storage. Not so much probably for our core data because we have our really mature integration pass in place now, but looking to use Squiz Connect to talk to our marketing line of business applications, the Adobe Audience Managers, the Marketos, the other systems that our marketing sibling division uses, being able to connect directly with those and share information, share campaigns, share results, share push information through Adobe Target, and really integrate that experience on the acquisition side could be a real bonus for us. And the last one we're looking at, which is probably going to be a very late 2021, is copying Unitaz, who I think went live-ish this morning in a move to cloud. So we're currently an on-prem Squiz CMS with a cloud funnel back, but moving our CMS to a cloud-hosted solution. And for us, that is very much the cook's tour. I will hand back to Anthony. Just thank you guys for listening. Hopefully it wasn't too confusing or too rapid, but sure enough, I will answer any questions you've got.
Thanks very much, Andrew. That was a great presentation. We've got a number of questions come through. But please, everyone, feel free to ask any questions there in the Q&A tab if you've got any burning questions that you'd like answers to. Yeah, look, there's a number of different things that people want to discuss, and you know, Andrew, you mentioned earlier the timeline associated with the initial phase of this project, and I wanted to do a little bit more of a deep dive around what that looked like. So you mentioned approximately a year, kind of end to end for delivery of this portal. I mean, obviously there's a lot of technical complexity associated with this. Can you give us a bit of an overview around what that timeline sort of looks like?
Okay, so at the end of 2018, we stood up what we call internally like a TI bid, a technology initiative, where we present a business case. That was in collaboration with our Division of Student Services and specifically the Student Comms team to rebuild Student Portal as a project. Now, these things are evaluated against a lot of other projects. So we won the money, but the way—
Good starting point, isn't it?
It is always a good starting point. And that's actually one of the questions in the Q&A I can see there. So we may end up touching on that a little bit too.
Yeah.
But what we did is we put that bid in and then it had to go dormant through the review process. So we really started in earnest on Student Portal the investigation, the whole project, in March 2019. So we did the identification of our backlog features at the very highest levels. We then did our estimates. We then moved to build. We were lucky in that we had a integrations platform in place, and we actually had half a dozen integrated applications that we could reuse. We could extend them but we could reuse a lot of that goodness. So we were about 70% way at the middle tier already there. We did commission the engagement with our exam timetables and classroom scheduling, along with our card. So that was 3 major integration pieces that we did as part of that work. But what we would do is break out our features. We would then round table estimates, looking at requirements. We would have our product owners in there. We would have our technical SMEs, and we would get the highest cut, and we could then schedule that with our student services and comms guys to see where those features would need to be delivered to be temporarily usable by students. Once again, not delivering something that should have been delivered 3 weeks ago because we've missed the boat. So shuffling those pieces around, which we actually did on a massive big whiteboard to work out where we could take the things. That was the way we were able to sanely scope what we could deliver in 2019.
It's still a pretty amazing accomplishment. I mean, 9 months to deliver a portal with such levels of technical complexity is pretty fantastic. So certainly hats off to you and the Charles Sturt team. Do you think there's anything that could have been done on your end to kind of reduce that timeline further, or was that kind of a real crunch to even get to that point?
That was a real crunch, and the guys will attest to it. We threw a lot of resources at it in Q4 of 2019 to get it to where it was. The dividend was certainly paid, and we took a lot of learnings away from the way we approached our sprint planning and feature planning that we've applied this year. And this year's been a much more sane build, sane in the context of COVID, but sane nonetheless. There's nothing we could have done in 2019 to deliver it any quicker or with any greater features.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You touched on it very briefly, I guess, around the associated funding there. We've got a question from Karen. You mentioned using a project management approach. How does this work when the project money runs out? So how do you continue to help develop and maintain a program of works like this if there's no specific funding there?
Touch wood, we've secured it. And this is our 3rd year in a row, 21 will be, which is a very good validation of our progress and the outcomes and the value we've added, in that the guys who hold the purse strings can see merit in us continuing our work. But knowing when we go into a project what our budget is, and we do this year in advance, we say, okay, this is our backlog, this is the rough estimate of what we need. They're very high level, they're almost back of napkin estimates, but so far we've been accurate within 7%, 1.5% this year. So we're really hitting the marks on it as we're learning how to use that budget. But we scale out our features and then we build to a budget. So we don't overpromise and say we are going to do everything and try and deliver mega millions of dollars worth of budget in hundreds of thousands of dollars of funding. We are very reasonable, and we're really good communicators with our stakeholders and our steering committees so that their expectations are well highlighted, and our deliverables are also well highlighted, so we don't get that conflict. They expect 10 Rolls Royces and we give a VW. Not that our product is a VW. It's certainly a Porsche, but it's only one Porsche. Yeah, that whole engagement and management of stakeholders was a good learning. We have evolved that over time. Even going back, if we could rewind the clock to 2019, I don't think we'd do anything different.
Okay,
I think
that's
what we did was as successful as it could have been at that point in time. And it was a transition in mindset from the DVCs, PVCs, everybody across that upper echelon of the enterprise to manage their expectations and make them realistic. And we did turn someone who was a little bit questioning of the value we'd offer into a raging fan. So.
Yeah, I did wonder about that. I mean, often with these type of projects, technical complexity is one aspect, but do you think potentially stakeholder management was also one of the big challenges of this project? Or
absolutely. Okay. Yeah, because a student portal is an octopus, it touches nearly every part of the university intrinsically. Our core business is delivering education to students, creating successful graduates. So there is no part of the business that this didn't touch. So getting identification, buy-in, ownership. Buy-in is one thing, but actually having the executive sponsors take ownership and champion this has been a real win.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you're seeing great results like the improvements there in NPS score and, obviously traffic numbers, et cetera, it's obviously a lot easier to be able to go back to stakeholders, teams and senior exec and say, hey, this is what we've delivered. This is the outcome. There's significant ROI. And then to be able to justify future phases of a project like this.
That's it. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see what other questions we've got coming through. How How did you manage the transition from your old system and process to the new portal, and what was the impact on the student experience? So that's obviously a question much more around change management there, and that forms a huge part of projects like this. So
absolutely. So we have, as an enterprise, subscribed to ADCAR. We all did the training, so we partnered with Student Comms. They're the guys who are charged with sending EDMs to students, to communicating to prospectives in partnership with our division of marketing. Getting buy-in and collaboration between those guys meant we could do our student-facing teaser campaign, our Student Comms. We could engage in a private beta with our returning students to do the focus group work. We could do all of these things with surety around our communications and change planning, that the students weren't going to get a shock that on the 10th of December last year, suddenly something came up that they weren't expecting. We did a heavy campaign in the last 5 to 6 weeks, lots of messaging, lots of screenshots, teaser campaigns. We also did drop-in sessions for the guys who do the content management. We'd done extensive collaboration work with the guys who are actually managing the core platforms that surface the data up in Student Portal. We sat down, we did videos, and we did walkthroughs and training sessions with our student central support teams, the guys who interact with students all the time. Yep. We're a little lucky, obviously, with our DSS, or Division of Student Services. They manage our student central team. So having the drive from both of those as two teams within one division meant we were highly aligned. So the product owner's vision was readily digestible by the student central guys.
Okay, that makes sense. We've got a couple of questions here that are kind of around a similar theme. Do alumni have access to the portal, or do students who have already graduated potentially still have access to the portal?
They do. So you are a Charles Sturt student for 18 months after your graduation.
Okay.
If you came back from an undergraduate and you rejoined doing HDR or postgraduate studies, you become reinvigorated as a fully fledged line of business student, but our alumni can still access the platform and get their transcripts, get their grades, seek support services. So our alumni service still supports students in that post-graduation transition to employment phase.
Fantastic.
And then we do have our public alumni site as well, which is readily accessible to anybody, but it doesn't have that personalized. You can't get your transcript data. It does lead you down to your student portal. But yeah, we still support the students in that portal sense for a good year and a half.
And my assumption is that life cycle can then recontinue. Obviously, if you're an alumni and 18 months later you decide you want to come back and do your master's degree, well, I'm sure you've still got the same student number, and your similar portal experience and access just can continue.
I, as a staff member, still have my student number from 25 years ago here, 94009981. I can still rattle it off.
There you go.
Their number. So yes.
I'm concerned about how long you spent at university to be able to memorize that, Andrew. What's going on?
It was 20 years outside in between at private.
Wow.
But yeah, our students are our students for life. That's the bargain and the agreement we make with them. So we're there to support them the whole way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We had a question around, well, we've got a couple of sort of tech related questions as well, which would be good to go over. A question around how you collect and send survey data.
All right. So if we're doing a little ad hoc, we can use our anonymized Usabella platform to do A/B testing or 1 in 20, those sort of things, and pop up little short surveys. We collate those and manage them. We also partner with our ethics committee to do larger user testing, whether that's moderated remote, moderated face-to-face, recorded sessions, things like that, where we have a schedule of tasks. So we do tree jack testing and other things for our IA. So having those user tests, we've got them on hand. We are very lucky in that our UX manager is a psychologist. So
yeah, makes it
we'll take that and do the stat analysis, and we'll get our results out of that. But all of our user data collection through surveys is all oversight and managed through our ethics committee.
Okay. Fantastic. Was there any specific reason that you chose to do I guess, a responsive web build rather than building this as an app?
Mainly for our technical base. So we have capability and capacity in Squiz. We have a couple of absolute guns, guys who have been using the platform for the 11 years that CSU's had it. Doing that meant we had that organic skill to both build in the first instance and B, to support it down the long term. We would have had to have sought some way to build capability and capacity to do that as a native app. We still have a project for a Charles Sturt native application, and we do have one now, but the wealth, and the analytics at the time around platform usage and everything indicated that the strongest demand was on a tablet and on a desktop, or laptop, I should say, not a traditional boat anchored desktop, but on a laptop device.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly gives you that kind of flexibility to be able to, improve, upgrade, and have a continued program of works without having to significantly overhaul apps and, and cater for new operating system releases, et cetera, et cetera.
It does mean we can get new features to market much quicker. Not large scale features. They would be the same inputs and temporal time, duration as a app versus a web app. But for small little tweaks and that personalization, those things, we can roll them out to market in a week.
Wow.
We might not get that flexibility if we were to try and do that through a native application. The review periods alone might be hard. So this way we've absolved ourselves from Apple or Google's reviews as well.
Yeah, for sure. Exactly. You don't have to consider that in your timelines. You mentioned obviously using Matrix as a presentation layer, but primarily using jQuery for a lot of the builds. My understanding is the rationale around that was really so you had, it was easy access to developers that had those kind of skills.
Yeah, so we piloted things like Angular. We had an old staff hub built in Angular JS. We've tried Angular native, like 8 and other bits and pieces, transpiled languages. We've tried Vue. We were looking at React.
Yep.
All of our pilots pointed to the fact that our team were guns in either vanilla JS or jQuery. So for us to build that rapid time to market, that supportability and that maintainability down the long haul, we went down to that lowest common denominator of jQuery over Bootstrap. So potentially, questionable by some people, but for us, it's certainly aligned with our capabilities and means we've turned out a product that we are pretty proud of.
Have you come up against any limitations there with jQuery that hasn't been able to handle, or for the most part, it's okay?
The two-way binding that we miss out on means we have to account for those sort of things ourselves. But we've written our own little plugins and other bits and pieces. Our guys are very au fait with extensions around jQuery, and we've kept it up to date, and it does what we need. Could we do better? For sure. Could we, rip this to an SPA? Potentially. Would that impact our time to market and our maintainability? Yes.
Yes, and you've got to consider that, I suppose, and potentially associated tech debt as well.
That's it. The total cost of ownership would have to be reviewed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know jQuery potentially sometimes the front end experience is not as fast as something like React, but from what I can see, the portal's incredibly snappy.
Yeah, a lot of that comes down to that high performance API cache that I called out on ours. So we've got an entire data application, a data application that acts as a front end cache. It's also one of our participates in our security layer. So it's high performance, high availability, highly secure. And without it, we would really suffer. That is the core underpinnings of our front end of Student Portal. So,
and I assume the associated cache settings are all controlled through that?
Very much. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So, I mean, for nerds, we do have 4 web tier caches in behind our load balancer and other bits and pieces, that front end matrix, but our data caching is almost real time. When we use SP API, that's our nomenclature for our Student Portal API cache. Yeah. It's pulling from those external systems in real time or on a push from the external change. So it's all set up with triggers and other bits and bobs so that it is as highly performant and highly real time as possible.
As it can be, yeah. Look, we're going to have to wrap it up there, Andrew, because we've got to be off by 3 p.m. today. But I just really wanted to thank you again, and Anthony as well, for being here for the webinar. It was absolutely fantastic to see what Charles Sturt has achieved. The outcome, especially in such a short time frame, has been amazing. So once this is complete, we will be hosting this on the website and sharing links to everyone as well. Just wanted to thank everyone for attending as well. Thank you.
Brilliant, guys. Thanks for having me, and thank you for everyone who listened in. If you've got any questions, sing out.
Thanks a lot.